Hey,
Good morning,
how you
my
doing?
doing good, doing good. Technical issues this morning, but it's all good, ready to rock and roll. Dr. Lott,
Okay.
and I'm really glad you reached out to me on this. You don't know this, but I purchased some radio stations down here in the lower part of the state, and I've been setting them up, and so I spent a lot of time listening to talk radio over the last 90 days, 3 months, 4 months, as we've gotten all this set up. And one of the things that I noticed, and you mentioned this specifically in this article that you have in the Washington Times, as you're talking about non-lethal firearms alternatives, you mentioned that talk radio hosts are talking a lot about non-lethal stuff. Byrna specifically. Byrna is and it seems like a really good piece of kit, but the problem is, and I kind of agreed with you when you sent me this text. I was like, my head was nodding. This may not be a popular take, but this push by Dana Lash and Sean Hannity and Glenn Beck and Vince the Vince Show and others, that Byrna is the magical bullet, so to speak, on self-protection. It can lead to some real misconceptions, and you go into this in the article. Tell me what your thoughts are here on some of this push for a lot of non-lethal options.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, you listen to conservative radio, and I listen to a lot of the podcasts, and it's all over, not just the ones you mentioned, but Ben Shapiro, Dave Rubin, Megyn Kelly. It's all over it. And, they make it seem like these non-lethal devices, shooting pepper ball projectiles or kinetic ones, are a replacement for guns. And, they'll mention things like police are using this, but what they don't make clear is that the police, when they have this, have a gun as a backup in case it doesn't work. And there's a lot of evidence that indicates that there are real limits to using these things. The National Institute of Justice finds that only about 20% of the time that you use some type of pepper gas for police does it actually accomplish what they want it to do. But they have the gun as a backup. And there are lots of reasons why there are limits to it. So, for example, the weather, if depending upon the wind blowing or if it's raining, there are limits on using it when you're in enclosed areas because if you use it, to the extent it will affect people, will also affect the person who's using it. Um, and there's limits, physical limits on people. So, for example, if the person that you're using it on has been exposed to it in the past, it can limit its effectiveness on that individual.
Right.
But I suppose the biggest, to me, misconception is the fact that you have either a lethal option or you have to use one of these other things for a non-lethal option. And what it ignores is the fact that about 95% of the time that people use guns defensively, it's not necessary to fire the gun. Simply brandishing the gun is enough to cause the criminal to break off an attack.
Right.
You're talking about way less than 1% of the time that defensive gun uses are used. Do you have a fatality or a wounding that occurs? And so, you know, uh, guns themselves overwhelmingly have a non-lethal option. One of the guys, Brian, who is the owner of this Byrna company, I did a podcast with him recently. He gave an example where, he had a road rage incident years ago. The person had gotten mad at him for some reason and had driven his car in front and cut him off and forced them both to go to the side of the road. And they did. And this man got out of the car, came charging at Brian there. He was much larger than Brian, he said, and was younger. And he was worried that the guy could hurt him. But the thing is, you don't need Byrna to do that. If he had simply brandished a gun, my guess is, very extremely likely that the individual would have backed off at that point.
Right.
And so, and one can go through the limits for other types of things, like they go and they have kinetic weapon, which is basically a hard ball that gets fired out. But there are limits to that too. If the person's wearing heavy clothing, or if like a leather jacket, for example, or if it's windy or rainy, it's much less accurate to fire that than it is to go and fire a gun, simply because it has greater surface area, and it has less velocity, less force behind it, so that wind or whatever will cause it to deviate from the path that you want it to do. But
right.
they don't. They make it sound like, well, you use this and you'll incapacitate the attacker for 40 minutes, up to 40 minutes. But they ignore the fact that there's a large percentage of the time that it won't incapacitate the person at all.
Right. Well, and look, I want to make it clear to the audience, first and foremost, there is a place for this tool, this Byrna launcher or any other non-lethal alternative, tasers, etc. There is a place, and these are good implements. These are not something that we're poo-pooing on their face. But I think part of the problem is that the messaging is what we're hearing. The messaging is, you don't have to carry a lethal firearm, because the implication is this will do just as good a job. Is kind of the reaction, and we know from statistics that that's not true.
I agree.
Yeah.
Look, you may have individuals who just refuse to have a real firearm. That's fine. You may have people who are going, like police officers, who may have a Byrna device and a gun. My concern is that with the advertising, as you're saying, there are going to be a lot of people who aren't going to carry both a Byrna type weapon and a gun, and they think that this is simply going to be enough to have the Byrna weapon. And look, but I just think it's misleading to go and imply that whenever you have a gun, you're going to have to result in the death of the attacker. Or, can that happen? Yeah, obviously, it's a gun. But it ignores the fact that the vast majority of the time that people use it, it's not necessary to actually fire the gun.
Right. And I think that was the key takeaway in reading this article from you, was that, that again, the defensive gun use that you and I have talked about ad nauseum on this program, that the vast majority of them required not a single shot to be fired. And so just the mere presentment of a firearm was enough to stop the crime in process. And I'm with you. I agree. And this is probably like a hot take. This is probably a take that some people aren't going to agree with. But look, if that's all you can carry, somebody in the chat room just said not everyone's allowed to carry or use a firearm. I understand that. And if that's the case, then the Byrna is probably, or something similar to it, is probably a great alternative for you. But it shouldn't be treated as if it is, again, the mythical totem that will keep you protected without hurting anybody long term. And that, I think, is the biggest problem. That false sense of security that some of these advertisements are making people feel, to say, well, if you are uncomfortable with a real firearm, or you don't want it, then just carry this and you'll be fine, because you'll knock them down and you can run away and it'll be 40 minutes before they get up off the ground. But we've seen it. We've seen people not be knocked down by tasers. We've seen people who've been able to struggle through tear gas or whatever else. And these launchers themselves, these non-lethal launchers themselves, they can still be dangerous if you hit somebody in a sensitive area, the throat, the face, things like that. If they have some other kind of pre-existing medical condition, they can still be injured, and they can still die from these kind of things.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned tasers, for example. What people don't understand is that there are real limits to using a taser. If somebody's wearing rubber-soled shoes, for example, or if it's winter and you have, heavy clothing on, which provides insulation. There's a reasonable chance it's not going to work. I have some data in the piece for national, but if you look at New York City, for example, um, and they were using tasers pretty much before anybody else was using it. They found in New York City only about a third of the time that tasers were being used did they actually take down the person that they were being used on. Because you have cold weather for a good portion of the year, and I'm sure someplace like Alaska, you're going to have those same types of obvious limits that are there.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody may wear heavy boots that have rubber soles on them that provide insulation. So there are all sorts of issues, and I worry that those get glossed over.
Yeah, well, we even know somebody mentioned we were talking about leather jackets, and up here, Carhartt is like the soup du jour for outerwear. We actually had an incident up in the interior of Alaska a few years ago where somebody was actually saved from a bullet by a Carhartt. I mean, it went through a front windshield and it struck the zipper of their Carhartt and deflected it and didn't kill them. So again, there's no surefire way to stop a threat, even with a firearm. But this idea that you could rely on something that's less than lethal and treat it with the same, weight as you would with a firearm is problematic. And I think that's your point, and that's definitely my takeaway on this. Is there's a place for every tool, no doubt about it, and non-lethal does have its place, but we shouldn't treat it like it is the penultimate answer in as a substitute for a firearm.
Yeah, look, you have people who can't carry a gun, as the person on the chat room was saying. Felons, for example, can't legally own a gun. They're concerned about their safety. They should be able to have some type of protection. You have places around the country, definitely not Alaska, but you'll have like New York or New Jersey or California, where even after Bruin, it's been very difficult for many people to get licensed and be able to go and carry concealed. And there are other situations where it could matter. So, for example, if you're talking about an aggressive animal, for instance, brandishing a gun isn't going to stop an aggressive animal from going after you. Okay, they no concept of the notion of brandishing there, and so having something that may be non-lethal could be useful in stopping an aggressive animal from going after you.
Dr. John Lott is our guest. You can find him at crimeresearch.org. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and the author of many books, including Gun Control Myths and More Guns, Less Crime. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Dukes Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with more. It's Firearms Friday. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break here with Dr. John Lott. Anthony says, and I think this is a good analogy. A good analogy. Anthony says, it's a hammer and screwdriver discussion. Lethal and less lethal options are just two tools for two different jobs. You don't hammer screws and you don't screw nails. And I agree with that 100%, Anthony. There's a reason for it. And there is a place for the less than lethal alternatives. And but I think that the main takeaway on this for me, and I think for Dr. Lott as well, I'll let him speak to it, is that that's fine if that's the light it's being presented in. And unfortunately, they've taken a marketing tack to say that this is just as effective as a firearm, which we know is probably not the case because for the variety of reasons that Dr. Lott just outlined. In some circumstances, it's better than a firearm. As he pointed out, you're out jogging a wild dog comes and charges you, a dog doesn't understand what a gun is, but a dog definitely understands what pepper spray is the second it hits it. So, and this is a this is been a debate for years on the non-lethal issue, but I think Berna has brought it up to everybody's attention. You just interviewed with them. Did you bring this up with them when you were talking with them on the podcast,
Oh,
Dr.
yeah.
Lott?
No, I mean, there's a link in the piece if they go to our website at crimeresearch.org. There's a link in the piece there to the interview, and I brought up these different points. In fact, they basically conceded the fact with regard to the pepper gas type projectiles that they have. They themselves said that they didn't really rely on that they relied on the kinetic one. We didn't really get into the limits on the kinetic ones there too, but there are limits there too. But when they go and talk about in their ads about, making it so that somebody's incapacitated for up to 40 minutes, they're referring to the pepper gas, tear gas type options that they have. And, they themselves were, admitted that they didn't rely on that. The ones that they put in their chamber first were the kinetic rounds, not the pepper or the tear gas, because of issues like weather, whether it's windy or rain, or whether the person may have developed some type of resistance to it because they've been exposed to it before, or whether you're in an enclosed area, like a room in your house. You don't want to use something like that because you're as likely to be affected, if it's going to have any effect, as the person you're firing at.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because it the problem is that, especially, we've seen case after case after case where they have been partially effective or maybe ineffective, and that's the thing. That's when I if I'm going to go forth and I want to make sure that I am protected or my family's protected, I want the most surefire way to keep myself protected on those cases. And when you lay out everything from the issue of defensive gun use with presentment, where it doesn't require anything to be fired, and some of the ineffectiveness of these other things, if I had to weigh both options on a scale, I would still go with the firearm if I was able to carry it. Again, the caveat here for everybody out there who's screaming at the radio is that the caveat, if I can carry, if I can't, well, then Berna sounds like a damn good idea, right? If I can't carry a firearm for whatever reason, it sounds like a good idea, but it shouldn't be treated, again. And this is what we say about buying a gun. You don't buy a gun and then just put it in your pocket or put it in your purse and put it in your truck and say, well, now I'm protected. You've got to get the training. You've got to understand the laws. You've got to do all these other things. It's not a magic totem. And I think that's the biggest takeaway on this, for sure. Dr. John Lott is our guest. Crimeresearch.org is where you'll find him. I posted links up in the chat room for the article in the Washington Times, which I'll repost again right now. You can go take a look at it and take a read of it. We're going to continue. We're 10 seconds out here, and we will pick things back up on this. And we're also going to talk about his latest piece at Townhall, talking about reciprocity. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all the online YouTube stuff.
What the hell is an assault weapon?
If we could just figure out how to get all of the murder guns and the attack guns and not keep selling those to people and just sell protection guns, I think that would be great and solve a lot of problems.
Does this mean that if we hurt your feelings, you'd consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can live with that. Here's Michael Dukes.
Dr. John Lott is our guest from the Crime Prevention Research Center. He's the author of many different books, including More Guns, Less Crime and Gun Control Myths. He's written for many publications, including the Washington Times, where this piece comes out. He's been a contributor to Fox News and everything else. Dr. Lott, you were hesitant to publish this piece, I'm sure, because you're I don't know if people would take this as an anti-defense stance or not, but I think you're just pointing out the issue of it's not necessarily the tool, it's the way that it's being marketed. Am I reading that wrong? What was your hesitancy in trying to bring this forward?
Well, uh, there are multiple reasons, but I suppose one of the reasons is I've been on the show for all these guys who I'm mentioning there, taking these advertisements. Some of them, a number of them, I kind of regard as friends, and they're getting big bucks from taking these ads that are there. I mean, anybody who listens to the number of ads that they have on it know that they're getting a fair amount of their revenue from this. And I guess I was a little worried about how that they were going to take the criticism there, because a number of them have gone out with kind of not just the regular ads, but with kind of personal endorsements for the product, and just the ads are so exaggerated in terms of saying, whenever you use a gun, basically implying that you're going to kill somebody and that there are legal problems with that and what have you. Um, I think not only the brandishing point that we've mentioned several times, that the vast majority of times it's not actually necessary to fire the gun. 95% is just brandishing, but also the fact that you're not going to get into the type of legal problem if you are a justifiable self-defense. One of the things we got into in the interview that I did with the Burnett people was that they were talking about the fact that you're going to face all these huge legal challenges, and I think that's wrong. I mean, there's something referred to as the reasonable person standard, that you can use force that's commensurate to the risk that you're facing. So, and you can listen to the interview that I did if you go to my website and click on the Washington Times thing. Washington Times doesn't have the links that I have on the crimeresearch.org website. But, the problem is that when you go and you do this, the vast majority of times that people actually use guns defensively, it's not a problem. Now, if you go and shoot somebody in the back who's running away from you, by the reasonable person standard, you're not going to be in danger. But if the example that Brian gave, where in a road rage instance, somebody came out of their car and was going towards you, if you brandish your gun, that's a commensurate response to the threat that you faced at that point, and there's nobody that's going to get you in trouble for doing that.
Right.
Now, if you go and just threaten somebody who isn't threatening you at all, then you can go and get in trouble. Or if you go and fire a gun when there's really no reasonable standard that you would view as putting you in danger, then you're going to, like shooting somebody in the back who's running away, then you're going to get in trouble.
Right. And I think that's the biggest thing. There is a danger. Obviously, there is a danger of of not a danger, but there's a fact that you're going to have some kind of legal challenge if you get involved in one of these incidents, one way or the other. But again, as long as you understand the laws and are using force from within the law, you should be okay. Your life's going to be upended one way or the other. But again, I think the biggest thing.
I don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the other things that's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine are these ads for insurance for people who are carrying, and I think those insurance policies are much more costly than is justified. If you use a gun defensively, in the cases that I look at, and people can look at our website for examples of defensive gun uses, the vast majority of time, police don't even arrest the person to begin with. And even when they do, they're often let go very quickly. If you're facing somebody who's armed, or if you're facing somebody who may be bigger and stronger than you are, if you have a concealed carry permit, it's often that the police will go and give the benefit of the doubt to the person who used the gun defensively.
Right. Well, I think you and I are both in agreement that this is a good tool, but it has to be used in the right way, and that the messaging is what's important here. And that's really what I think you're taking issue with, is the messaging.
Right.
And I agree with that. I agree, and it may be a rough take for out there, but if that's an option that I needed to use, Berna, sure, that would be one of my first options if I couldn't use a firearm. But generally speaking, I don't have room to carry two different guns, two different defensive weapons, and so I will probably be
Right. Look, the police
using a gun.
have to carry both weapons.
Yeah.
But they carry both weapons for a reason, because they know that they have to have a backup for the non-lethal weapon that they have.
And Frank just said something in the chat room, which I'm going to basically take issue with, because he said these articles and conversations just divide 2A advocates. It's a good tool of the left, and I disagree. The answer to speech you don't agree with is more speech. And if we're not willing to self-analyze ourselves in the 2A circle, or in the conservative circle, or in whatever bubble that we're in or circle we're in, if we're not willing to analyze ourselves and be self-critical of ourselves, somebody else is going to do it for us. We need to have that self-analysis. I think that's bourgeois, because anytime we need to talk about, if there's something like this that comes out, we should bring it up, and we should talk about the different issues of it. Dr. Lott, I know that's probably going to be the reaction of some, is that this is just a way to divide us. What's your thought on it?
Is it that my discussion is dividing?
Yeah,
us,
that the article about this and the conversations just divide 2A advocates, is what he said, and they said they'll use it as a tool to divide us.
Look, my whole involvement in this debate from the beginning has been to try to make sure that people are safer. And, I go and point out the people who I think who benefit the most from owning guns. They're basically two groups of people. They're people who are relatively weaker physically, women and the elderly. And they're the people who are most likely victims of violent crime. And that overwhelmingly tends to be poor blacks who live in high crime urban areas.
Right.
But, what's driven me, what got me involved in this debate, because I wasn't a gun person to begin with, was just trying to figure out what makes people safer. And that's the same thing here. If, as we say, there may be groups of people, there may be people who can't have a gun, could be a felon or something. There may be people who are just unwilling to carry a gun. There may be other cases, like with the animal attacks, that brandishing just simply isn't an option. So anybody who reads the piece that I have there can go and see I make those points that are there.
Right.
But at the same time, I think these ads that make it sound like these non-lethal ones are kind of a perfect substitute, that you can just, incapacitate an attacker for 40 minutes there while you're waiting for the police to arrive, couldn't be further from the truth. That
Right.
There's a reason why the police themselves have firearms as backups. And if you're going to carry, the ads never say, carry this non-lethal device in addition to the gun. They make it sound like it's a perfect substitute for a gun. And I just think that you're endangering people's safety by giving them that information.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right. Well, we've got links up to this. I've also linked Dr. Lott's interview with the folks at Berna, so you can see the discussion for yourself and read Dr. Lott's article over at the Washington Times. It's good stuff. We're coming up on the break, and Dr. Lott has got a brand new piece over at Townhall, townhall.com, that came out just a couple of days ago, talking about National Concealed Carry Reciprocity. And surprisingly, this has been one of the things that I have been, I'm both happy about and a little leery about. And we're going to get Dr. Lott's take on this here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return in just a moment. with Dr. John Lott from the Crime Prevention Research Center. You can find him at crimeresearch.org. And, of course, all of his writings and posts and everything else. Go check it out right now. Back with more right after this on Firearms Friday.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
I'm sorry, you said something, Dr. Lott. I had you muted for a second there. What was that?
How's life in Alaska these days? What's going on?
You know, it's not too bad. As I mentioned earlier, I ended up buying some radio stations down here on the Southern Peninsula, down in Kenai, Lower Kenai Peninsula in Homer. And we took over on January 1st. And so I spent the last 5 or 6 months running around like a chicken with my head cut off, trying to get all this put together and rebuilt these stations, brand new, built them out with all new stuff and everything. And so that's been my life for the last 5 months or so, getting ready for it and then moving my whole family down, and then setting up the new stations and getting things rolling. So it's been an exciting time to say the least. So it's been fun.
How many stations is your show on now?
So my show is on, we got 3 stations down here, plus the stations in Fairbanks, plus something like 16 translators or something across the state. So it's a bunch. We go all the way from Unalaska down on the Aleutian chain all the way up to Fairbanks in the interior, and then of course here on Facebook and YouTube. So we got a good reach. It's been a fun time. It's been a lot of work. How about yourself? You've been doing well?
Yeah, I moved from Montana to Utah, so I live in Salt Lake now.
Oh, you do?
But,
yeah, you had that. One of the last, I guess it was a few months ago, you were on a deck. You had a deck behind you with a big view. Is that from Utah, or is that was that in Montana?
That's Montana.
Oh, okay.
So I lived in Missoula, had a house up on the side of one of the hills there, and had a view across the Missoula Valley.
And what made you move to Utah?
Well, my fiance has relatives that live in Salt Lake City.
Right. Oh, I forgot. And I meant to tell you that. Well, I did. I saw that you got engaged. So congratulations on that. And on happy day. When's the happy day?
I'm not sure. Should be soon. But,
okay.
She got fitted for a wedding dress. I guess it's not going to be ready till the end of May. So probably sometime after that.
Soon. It'll be good. All right. Well, good. Well, I mean, I love that you reached out to me with this, because because I'm in agreement with you. I love any tool that can help make us safer, but again, at the same time, the pretending that somehow it's the magical defense fairy that you just slip in your pocket and then you'll be safe. I think that's the biggest problem, and I agree with that. And on the insurance thing, I think Anthony makes a great point. Anthony said that insurance thing is also problematic. He said, I'd have to find the article, but I remember reading about how one of these left-leaning states were using it as a criteria to pin premeditation on you, or as a method to prove to the jury, I guess, that you intended to shoot someone because you'd gotten shooter's insurance. And I could see that. I could see that being used as an argument because you insured yourself. You were wanting to go out there and shoot somebody. It's definitely problematic. Brian said those horror stories persist, which drives the sales of these insurance policies as well. So, I mean,
I may not be at liberty to say which insurance I know something about, but they've had it for a number of years, and they've never actually had a case that they've paid out on, because it's just not used. At least by anybody legitimate. There's been 2 cases that they've had over, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people over how many years, where somebody really committed a crime in using a gun and they wouldn't defend them. But legitimate self-defense cases were like 0. And, it's just the odds of actually being in a situation where you're justifiably needing that insurance is just incredibly low, and the insurance premiums are much too high for what you get.
I I agree, and I agree with that, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Jeannie just went all the way. She went full bore on the other direction when we were talking about lethal versus non-lethal. She says less than lethal is for law enforcement. John Q. Public has no business carrying less than lethal tools. I disagree with that as well. I think that there's a place for any of those tools. But again, as Greg said, it's I can't carry two choices. It's too much weight. And so he's right. I mean, that's the thing. If I have one choice and it's valid for me to be able to carry a real firearm, I will. But if I don't, then a less lethal choice that works for me as well. There shouldn't be a restriction. Law enforcement should not be able to say, oh, it's only for law enforcement. No, it's a right to carry and defend myself. So I think both of those are valid.
I guess what I would say for Jeannie is that there are people, but to me, they're relatively limited. People who can't get a permit. You're talking about a few places in the country, surely not Alaska.
Yeah.
Where your constitutional carry, or the other 28 constitutional carry states.
Hold on, Dr. Lott. I'm going to let you finish that thought, but we're about to rejoin, so let's get back to it. Here we go. The Michael Duke Show.
What the hell is an assault weapon? Does that mean that if we hurt your feelings, you should consider the Michael Dukes Show assault radio? Okay, we can accept that. Here's Michael Dukes. Kind of a dick, but somewhat funny.
Yep. Welcome back to the program. Dr. John Lott is our guest. More Guns, Less Crime is one of his most well-known books, Gun Control Myths. He's also the president of the CPRC, which is the Crime Prevention Research Center. We've been talking about his article in the Washington Times on less than lethal. One final thought on that article, because right before we came out of the break, Jeannie had said that less than lethal is for law enforcement. John Q. Public has no business carrying less than lethal. And I disagree with that. I think they should be able to carry, either one if they want, or both if they have the belt space or the way to do it. And Dr. Lott was going to make a point on this before we jump to reciprocity.
Look, I agree there's a role for both, but I also think that Jeannie has a point in the sense that it's relatively limited what those other cases are. If you're somebody who's banned from having a gun, that's a relatively limited group of people. If you have somebody who refuses to have a gun, that's another group of people. And there may be some other selective things like dealing with an animal. There are benefits from having, because brandishing simply doesn't work, as we've talked about. But my own belief is that for the vast majority of people, the point that she's making is correct.
Yeah, and I would just say that, but if I have to go into a park where it's out like in New Mexico where they outlawed concealed carry in all the big parks and things like that, and I had to go out there and I wanted to comply, a less than lethal option on a civilian would be valid to me. It shouldn't just be restricted on that. All right, well, let's move over to this story that you wrote in the Townhall talking about National Concealed Carry Reciprocity. I am excited about the idea of reciprocity. I'm not as excited about the fact that the federal government would mandate, something about guns. I'm always worried about the things that they can give as the things that they can take away. That's my one concern with this. But I would love to see a national reciprocity bill. There's always already something like 36 states, I think, that recognize each other's concealed carry permits. So this would just basically make it law throughout the whole nation, right, Doc?
There's already a lot of reciprocity that goes on. It depends on what state permit you have. If you have Arizona's permit, it's recognized in 37 states. Utah is recognized in 36 states. Florida, some other states also have permits that are issued that are recognized across the country. You also have 29 constitutional carry states, including Alaska, where it's not even necessary to have a permit to be able to carry in those places. So you can travel a vast majority of the country right now. The problem is they can't travel every place. If let's say you're a woman who's traveling by herself, and your car breaks down, and you're having to travel through Illinois or California or New York or New Jersey or Maryland, or some of those a few other states, you may wish that you had the ability to protect yourself. If you drive a truck that's carrying valuable cargo, you may worry about somebody trying to steal what you have there, and having to drive through some of these states that are very restrictive may limit your ability to go and protect yourself and others. So, I understand your concern about the rules, but this is essentially what we have for driver's licenses right
Right.
now. If you have a driver's license in Alaska, you could drive all the way from Alaska down to Miami or Key West, and it would honor it. Now, you have to go and realize that the traffic rules can vary across the country. In some places, you're allowed to turn right on red, for example. In other places, you can't. Ignorance of the differences in the laws in the different places is no excuse, is no protection that's there. But people seem to make it okay driving across the country when they travel.
Right.
And the same thing is true with reciprocity. You have to go and know what the rules are in different places. But the bottom line is it's worked out really well. You just don't see permit holders getting in trouble
Right.
when they go and travel through other states.
Well,
One of the big ironies is, while it looks like reciprocity will pass the House in Congress, it seems extremely unlikely that it will pass the Senate because Democrats will filibuster it. You need 60 votes in order to overcome a filibuster. And while all 53 Republicans will vote for reciprocity, it's pretty clear that there won't be any Democrats who will vote for overcoming the filibuster to even allow a vote on it. And the irony is you have a number of Democrats from states like, let's say, Virginia, where both the senators there are Democrats, and they will fight tooth and nail against reciprocity, even though Virginia recognizes permits from 48 other states. A state like Vermont, which has 2 Democratic senators, recognizes people's ability to go and carry from all the other states in
Right.
the country. There are no problems that the senators from those states can point to with regard to reciprocity. There's no move, even though the Democrats control the state legislatures in both of those states. There's no move in either of those states legislatively to undo the reciprocity agreements that the state has with other states. There's no move at all.
Right.
And yet the Democratic senators for those places will vote, I'm sure, to uphold a filibuster on this. So,
Right.
unfortunately, even though Trump says that he strongly supports this and would sign such a law if it would go into effect, it's not likely to happen as long as the Democrats maintain the positions that they do on this.
Well, what this sounds like, Dr. Lott, is a politician problem. I mean, it's obviously not a police problem. You mentioned in the article that the vast majority of police, like 90% of street cops and 80-something% of administrators and police chiefs, are in support of a reciprocity law because they understand what it means on the street. This is not a this is a politician problem more than anything else.
Right. No, I mean, police and police chiefs are overwhelmingly supportive of reciprocity. You may have had, when states adopted right to carry laws to begin with, there was some concern, let's say by police chiefs, about what would happen, but they've learned over time how incredibly law-abiding permit holders are.
Right.
That there haven't been problems with it. And so their fears have been allayed, and they know that not only aren't there problems for the permit holders in their state, but they're not problems for permit holders from other states either.
Right. No, in fact, you've outlined the statistics that permit holders, generally speaking, are more law-abiding than even police officers. They end up doing crime more often than permit holders do. And that's I think that's a good statistic to keep banging on, because it shows that their fears are basically not well-founded. But this, again, comes back to the politics of it. They don't want to jump on board because they don't want to give, I don't know if it's not giving the Republicans a win. They just want to support their team. But I mean, it's ironic that Vermont, of all places, where they have reciprocity already with all 50 states, but they're not going to support it because reasons, whatever that is. It's frustrating. Do you think there's...
Unfortunately, I mean, up until recently, I was living in Montana, which is a pretty pro-gun state. But the Democratic Party in the state is really no different than the Democratic Party nationally on the gun issue. And I think that's pretty much true across the country that you have there. So,
yeah,
I don't think, I think it's basically they've changed fundamentally on the gun control issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Alaska, right? We were the second state in the union to do the constitutional carry. We've been more pro-gun than almost any other state in the nation. And yet our Democrats here in this state, they just put in another red flag law. They just put in another home invasion law or mandate safe storage and all this other kind of stuff. It makes no sense, but they're just, I guess they're just going to do what they're going to do in that regard. Final thoughts. We're down to the last 2 minutes here, Dr. Lott. Is there anything that we can do to help increase the chances of this reciprocity passing, or are we just at the mercy of those 7 Democrats at this point?
Well, I mean, I suppose if people live in the state where you have a Democratic senator, you can contact them. Obviously, that's not the case in Alaska, even though Murkowski's not the strongest on these types of issues. But if you know friends in other parts of the country that have Democratic senators, you can reach out to them, I guess, and talk to them. People basically, politicians care about their own constituents' views, not people from other states,
right?
Letting them know about things.
Well, it will be an interesting discussion, if nothing else, and especially, again, just the hypocrisy of Vermont. You were just, that really blew. I didn't know that specific statistic or that fact that they already allowed reciprocity from all the states, and yet they would vote against this. That seems to make no sense whatsoever. Dr. Lott, about a minute here. What else are you working on? Anything we should be looking forward to?
Well, we recently did a study on active shooting cases, kind of for the first time doing a deep dive comparing instances where police have stopped active shootings versus concealed carry permit holders. And it was pretty eye-opening. It's right up at the top of our website at crimeresearch.org. But for example, you find that permit holders stop these attacks at a greater rate than police officers do. And the police officers are actually more likely to get killed or injured when they're trying to stop these attacks. And a lot of it just stems from the fact that police in uniform have an incredibly difficult job, and we should be thankful for the work that they do. But if you have somebody in uniform and he's identified for sure as a person who's going to have a gun and you're an attacker, you have real tactical advantages. You can wait for the officer to leave before you attack.
We're out of time here. Dr. John Lott, our guest, the Michael Duke Show. Yeah, no, I mean, that's exactly it, Doc. The visibility. I mean, if you walk, if you're just playing a what if scenario, and you got a room or a gymnasium full of people, and you're an attacker, and you want to go in there and shoot as many people as possible, or do as much bad stuff as possible, the first thing you look for is somebody in uniform, right? You take them out.
Right.
But the concealed carry holders, of course, they're stealthy because it's concealed. They have no idea. I mean, I'm going to go out and read that because that.
Plus, it's just the number of police versus the number of permit holders. So you have about 21.5 million concealed carry permit holders in the United States.
Right.
We have 29 constitutional carry states where it's not necessary to have a permit. You have over 7% of American adults carry all the time, they say, and another 8% carry some of the time. Compare that to police. You have like 670,000 police officers in the United States. Let's say a third are on duty at any time. You have 200 and some thousand
Right.
that may be on duty. 200,000 police officers going to go and protect 340 million Americans. It's just the odds that they're going to be there.
Yeah.
And then the fact that they're in uniform means that even if they are there, they're either going to, the killer will either move to another target or they'll take out the officer first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and that's always been the axiom that, when seconds count, police are minutes away, kind of thing. And why do I carry a gun? Because carrying a cop is too heavy. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. They can't be there. And by the way, I know it says protect and serve on their cars, but what was it? US v. Rose that basically said that the police don't have a duty to protect you. Their job is to basically clean up after the fact. I mean, it's just, it is what it is.
I'd say this. Anybody who's read my academic research knows that I think police are extremely important. I think they're the single most important factor for reducing crime. But people have to recognize what an incredibly difficult job police have when they're in uniform for stopping these particular types of attacks. They have kind of like a neon sign above them that says "Shoot me first."
Right.
If an attack is going to be occurring in those places, and we have to appreciate the very difficult job that they have. Look, I mean, I'll just put it to you this way. If you are looking at air marshals,
right,
how many people think that air marshals ought to be in uniforms?
Right.
I think air marshals, that'd be good to have air marshals in uniforms. Why don't we put any air marshals in uniforms?
Right. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's a valid, and you're making your point. Again, the neon flashing billboard that says "Shoot me first." That is the ultimate case right there. Your research on this does not surprise me because, like you said, if they're the first ones to be taken down, then it's up to the concealed carry holder, or the concealed carry holder, if they're the only one, they can get the jump, and they have the element of surprise, which I think is important. All right, if you want to see, if you want to see Dr. Lott's research, crimeresearch.org. He's got all the posts up to his various articles and links, plus his academic research and their new study on the stopping of mass shootings by concealed carry holders. Dr. Lott, as always, my friend, it's great to talk with you. Congratulations again on your engagement, and we look forward to talking to you again here in the future.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks.
It's good to talk to you. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much. Dr. John Lott, our guest here on the program, The Michael Duke Show.